Mysore, like beginning, middle of Kartik. So I'll be landing in Bangalore and then taking a bus to Mysore. You'd have to have someone arrange that. What time do we stop? So 8:45 or 9? Or 8:45 or 9? Which? And do you want me to chant? After you had a recorded kirtan, do you want me to sing? Huh? That was a nice tune. You could still keep singing that. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatyade Shacharani Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuja Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Panchakalpachubhischa Kripasindhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo. So it is 22nd of September 2025 in Bahrain, and this is going to be the first of a series about how to deal with our material and spiritual life, how to have material and spiritual balance. This is a topic that I'm asked about a lot. And this is going to be in 4 parts. So what we're going to be discussing tonight is how can all the aspects of my life energize me spiritually. Tomorrow night we're going to be looking, Krishna willing, at our struggles with Maya. Is there hope and how? And then the next evening, how can I find high quality time with Krishna in a life filled with so much to do? And then the last evening, which will be Thursday, we'll be looking at always thinking of Krishna. Is it possible in the realities of my life? So again, tonight we're starting with how can all the aspects of my life energize me spiritually? So this is a question that I myself was asking when I was growing up. You know, I was brought up in a very religious family, obviously not a Hindu or Vaishnava family, but a very religious family. And we would be regularly going to a temple, and we were regularly having different religious observances at home, like that. And I was attending religious school in the afternoons and on the weekends. But I couldn't figure out how could I make every aspect of my life spiritual. Like I was, how do I make brushing my teeth spiritual? How do I make going to the store spiritual? There seemed to be, there's like an echo. Can you take care of that? Okay. There was this duality. Okay, folks, look. Really simple thing. Take your phone. Everybody take out their phone. Take it out and do the silent trick. Okay? And if you're expecting King Charles to call you, put it on vibrate. They have a rule at the Vrindavan Institute that if anyone's phone rings during a class, they have to buy sweets for everybody. So I was seeing that there was this dualism, that God is here and the rest of your life, where is he? This disconnection. Of course, one of the definitions of a beginner, kanista, unsteady, not nishta, is one only sees God in the temple. Now that can mean many things. It can mean sectarianism. God is only in my temple, not in your temple. Right? You have to be a Sunni Muslim, not a Shiite Muslim. Or you have to be a Protestant, or you have to be a Catholic, or whatever. And we're going to kill you if you're the wrong religion. So it can be seen that way, but also it can be seen that we just see God in the temple. We don't see God in our life. So this was something that I was trying to resolve for myself personally, and one of the main attractions for me of the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy and the practice of Krishna consciousness was that you could spiritualize every moment of your life. But even though that was one of the main things that attracted me to join the Hare Krishna movement and become Srila Prabhupada's disciple, I still see happens within our own movement. That this is my spiritual life, and this is not my spiritual life. So, why are there some things that don't spiritually energize us, even though they're not sinful. And we know Srila Prabhupada asked us all to abstain from 4 sins: meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, and gambling. Now, it's not that dead animals in and of themselves are Maya, they're just part of the world. But the problem is that when you eat a dead animal, that it puts you so much into tamagun that your ability to see Krishna is impeded. It's the same with everything else. It's not that the biological act of reproduction is evil, but when one has illicit relationships, again, one goes so deeply into tamagun and rajagun that one's ability to perceive truth becomes impeded. If we look at intoxication, intoxicants are all plants, correct? I mean, now they also make some in laboratories, but there's nothing wrong with rotting potatoes or rotting barley. It fertilizes the earth. But it produces, if you ingest it, it produces toxins that again put you in rajagun or tamagun, usually tamagun, and your ability to perceive reality becomes impeded. And gambling is cheating. You're trying to make money without honest living. And this puts you again into a tamasic mentality that makes it difficult to perceive God. So there are certain activities which put us so much into the lower modes of nature that having a consciousness of reality becomes very difficult. So we're not going to talk about those kind of things. We're not going to talk about, somebody running a butcher shop or somebody selling alcohol or running a brothel or being a criminal. We're not putting aside those sorts of things. Our everyday life, why is it originally, he had come from a place where pretty much everybody got married at a young age. And they had some career at a young age and they were settled. That was the culture Srila Prabhupada was coming from. He was expecting to find people like that in America to whom he would preach. There wasn't such an exchange of news in those days. Srila Prabhupada did not know or expect that he was going to find disenfranchised youth that had dropped out of society, what other people called the hippies. But the hippies, by the way, didn't call themselves hippies. They called themselves the counterculture, or freaks sometimes, but not hippies. But Prabhupada hadn't expected to find such people. He hadn't expected to find people who were single, who didn't necessarily have solid jobs, who were kind of floating and lost in life. And there's still a lot of people like this in Western countries, right? So what was Prabhupada going to do? He wasn't going to be able to teach them how to practice Krishna consciousness in their home and with their job, which is what he had expected and intended. Therefore, he had to start ashrams for everybody to move into. He had to start ashrams for women because there were all these unmarried women which wasn't something Prabhupada was even anticipating. It wasn't something that he had experience with. And so in the 60s and 70s in the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON became a very ashram-based society. So part of our conception in ISKCON that being really spiritual, being surrendered, means being a renunciate, living in an ashram, comes from our particular ISKCON history, which was formed by particular social, cultural factors. I mean, when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, that meant I dropped out of my university studies. I gave my car back to my father. I just took one little tiny bag of things to move in the ashram. I didn't even know, am I allowed to have shampoo? You know, it was like that. And that was the only way to join the movement at that time. We didn't have a conception that you could live a life in the world. I mean, it's interesting because Srila Prabhupada himself was very happy with his disciples who had jobs. Like, you know, Brahmananda, Satsrupa, they had jobs, and Prabhupada was very happy. Even in 1975, I was there in New York, and Gopal Krishna, at that time Gopal Krishna Prabhu, he was living with his wife Ekayani and his son Durlabh. Actually, they lived next door to me. And he was working as an advertising executive, and he had Pepsi Cola and Clairol hair dye were his accounts that he was managing. And the devotees in the temple at that time treated him very badly. There was this mood that only the brahmacharis and sannyasis were real devotees. And so they didn't allow him to give class. They were even spitting on us grihastas and women. It was pretty intense. And then the devotee running Spiritual Sky, Karandar, he left the movement. And Spiritual Sky, incense and oils, was a big income producer for our temples. So that was a very important post. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj had been GBC for all of India. And he left to go back to America and run a bus program. Perhaps you heard about that. They would convert buses into traveling temples and go from city to city. So Prabhupada had no one to run Spiritual Sky and no one to be GBC of India. And he wrote a letter in early 1975 saying that Gopal Krishna was competent to do either of those, but he didn't want him to give up his job, which just shocked the devotees in New York, that Prabhupada thought that having a job was more important than being the GBC of India. And so then they started treating him with some respect and asked him to give Bhagavatam class. Now, Prabhupada did end up making him GBC of India. He couldn't find anyone else. He did end up sending him to India. But my point is that according to the way ISKCON developed historically and culturally, we had this idea that if you're a renunciate living in a temple, you're spiritual. It was almost geographical. Like, if you're living in the temple ashram, you're an Uttam Bhakta. You know, if you're across the street, you're Majjham, and if you're like 2 blocks down the street, you're Kanista. There really was, I mean, that was really how people thought. So part of that is coming from this sort of historical situation, but part of this conception has been around for a long time. Arjuna had this idea as well. Arjuna was thinking, you know, if I'm going to fight this war, this is an abominable action. How are you telling me, Krishna, to keep abominable actions far distant and at the same time perform Buddha yoga? I'm confused by your equivocal instructions. Arjuna kept thinking, he thought this war is sinful. It's going to damage society. I'm disrespecting my superiors. I've heard that those who engage in these acts dwell always in hell. How can I do this? How can I do this spiritually? Oh, Madhava, oh husband of the goddess of fortune, how can you ask me to do something that is misfortune? Arjuna didn't have this idea that I can think about Krishna when Krishna said, Ma manusvam yujitcha. This was surprising to Arjuna. So this conception has been around also for many, many thousands, probably millions of years. That to be spiritual, you have to separate yourself literally and physically from the world. So we in ISKCON have this very ancient misconception, And then we're also kind of burdened with our particular historical, cultural misconception. We don't understand that service can be being an accountant, that service can be changing a baby's clothes. We don't think that's service. Another misconception is thinking about renunciation itself and thinking that if I'm really renounced, that means I'm going to be hard-hearted. So, of course, Srila Rupa Goswami deals with this, which Prabhupada quotes a lot, that if you just are into austerities, it can make your heart harder and harder and harder, which is the opposite of bhakti. Bhakti, the heart, Srila Rupa Goswami so nicely explains in the Southern Ocean, that bhakti is supposed to make the heart just melt. Actually, the ideal of bhakti, what is that music? Okay. So bhakti is supposed to make the heart in a permanently melted, flowing condition. But this is a definite misconception that, well, if I'm Krishna conscious, I'm going to have a hard heart, and I'm not going to care about anybody. I'm going to just become callous. Or people think that renunciation means being irresponsible. And I run into this a lot. You know, well, if I'm really Krishna conscious, I'm not going to take care of my family. I'm just going to do service all the time. Right? To be like a little child who just has no sense of responsibility. So there's often this kind of a misconception. Again, seeing our normal life in the world as something to get away from, something to harden my heart against, or something to be irresponsible about. And neglecting the emotional, social needs of the other people in my life, thinking it's all Maya. I'm not going to be there emotionally for others, and I'm not going to even take care of my own needs. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes about this, thinking I don't have emotional, social, physical, or other needs. I'm just going to neglect all of those. You know, I'm going to try to sleep 2 hours a night and only eat once a day, a little bit of food, and I'm not going to talk to anybody, and I'm not going to take care of my health. And again, in the early days of the movement, we really thought like this. We really, really thought like this. I mean, the idea of getting regular exercise, oh, that's Maya. You know, or eating healthily. I mean, when I joined the movement, we didn't even have time to read Prabhupada's books other than in the regular classes. You know, just work. And I've always been an avid reader. The only way I could have personal reading time was after the Sunday feast. That was the only time that I wasn't scheduled for anything. Like, I was scheduled every, to the minute. I never experienced that before in my life. But after the Sunday feast, there was nothing on my schedule. So I don't know if you know what a fire escape is. They're like outside of a building, like some stairs outside of the building. So I would go hide on the fire escape and read the Bhagavad Gita. So, you know, even time for personal study. Oh, that's all Maya. The problem is that we do have physical needs, we do have social needs, we do have emotional needs, and by just trying to repress them, trying to make our heart a desert, they're going to just plow through anyway at a certain point and flood us. And we see this, devotees do this artificial renunciation and hard-heartedness, and then they crack. You know, people, I'm going to be a brahmachari, and then they're 50, and they're like, I think I want to get married. And I've seen this happen enough times with enough people that it's a regular phenomena. You know, people just, they crack. They break, and they go, wait a minute, I have an off-balance life. And this comes from not seeing that these things can also be part of our spiritual life. All right, so these are the misconceptions. Please turn your phones on silent. Silent. Phones, please. Thank you. So what's the solution? So we're going to have two parts to the solution. The first solution is to see that the world is also part of Krishna. This concept of absolute duality is not the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, nor is it the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's a philosophy from other religions. In Islam, they have a philosophy of absolute difference between the world and God. They say God cannot be an avatar. He can't come here because he's so different from the world that he can't come here. But we see the world as the body of God. We see the mountains as his bones, the trees as his hair, as the hair on his body, the clouds as the hair on his head. We see the sunrise and sunset as his garments going through the sky. We understand that his taste is in the water. We'll be talking about this more on Thursday. But we see that the universe is the body of God. We see that his energy is everywhere. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyaktamurtina matstani sani bhutani nachaham te svastitaha. I may not be there personally, but my energy pervades everything. And as Krishna says in the Chaturshloki, just like the material elements enter into all the objects and yet remain separate, so I have also entered into everything, although I am separate. So Krishna is also within everything. Everything is his energy. So what is Maya? Maya is not a particular type of activity. We did talk about certain types of activities push us into tamagun and make it difficult to remember Krishna. But Maya is not a particular type of activity. Maya is a particular attitude. It's a particular way of thinking. It's a particular way of consciousness. It's a way of viewing things. Let's give an ordinary, mundane example. Here I am visiting the temple. This is a very nice chair that I'm on. And the people running the temple are happy if I am comfortable on this chair, correct? If I said, oh, I wasn't comfortable, they would be unhappy and they would make another arrangement for me to sit. So they're very happy if I'm enjoying sitting on the chair in the context of my doing service for the community. But if I say, oh, very nice chair, let me take this with me to my home, then that is an illusion. I'm not being given this chair as a gift for me to take home. I'm being given this chair as a place to sit and do some service for the temple while I am here. So Maya is, I see my body, my possessions, the world as mine to take home. I don't know where they came from. They're just here, and they're mine. Ishwaraham aham bhogi. I am the enjoyer. I am the controller. That is Maya. My body is not Maya. My things are not Maya. Seeing them, as Krishna says, how does he define Maya? Anything that appears to be of value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. No, it is my illusory energy, that reflection that appears to be in darkness. So the first solution is seeing Krishna is everywhere. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridayachir dunatistati. Krishna is in everyone's heart. Bhumirala panalo vayu kamano buddhaevacha. All of the different elements, they're all his. Bina, they're separated energies, but they're still his energies. Everything has a relationship with Krishna. Now, this is not just some theoretical understanding. Oh, God is everywhere and everything is God. It's not like that, but it's a very practical understanding. If I actually see that everything is part of God and God is everywhere and he is in everything and everything is him, then I will use everything in his service. In fact, I cannot use everything in his service unless I see that everything is part of him. And everything is related to him. I can use this chair in the service of the community because I see the relationship between this chair and the temple. So that's the first solution, is seeing that the world, it has something to do with Krishna. That everything in this world is about service to Krishna. Second solution, has to do with ourself and how we identify ourself. So how do we identify ourself? I'd like you to think for a minute. How do you identify yourself? So most of us identify ourselves, first of all, in terms of our birth, right? I'm the son or daughter of so-and-so person. I'm from such and such a family. I'm from such and such a place, right? Well, I'm from Kerala, or I'm from Tamil Nadu, or I'm from Bengal, or, right? So one funny story. So there was this professor in America, in Pennsylvania, Thomas Hopkins, and he had written his PhD dissertation on the Bhagavatam. And he saw an article in the newspaper about Srila Prabhupada, about that there was a movement in the Lower East Side of New York. And he became very interested. What is this movement? So he asked his university if they could fund him to go to New York and do some studies. So he took a bus to New York and he found 26 Second Avenue Temple. And the devotees had Prabhupada's Bhagavatam, right? His original Bhagavatams. And so Thomas Hopkins asked, oh, wow, what is this? Oh, this is Swamiji's book. So he starts looking at it. He sees it's the Bhagavatam. And he was astonished because he'd written his thesis on the Bhagavatam. And he only knew of one English translation. But this was a different one. And he said, who translated this? Oh, Swamiji. And then he asked this young man, he said, where is Swamiji from? And the young man said, India. And Dr. Hopkins, I heard this story directly from Dr. Hopkins. Dr. Hopkins said, he asked him, oh, what part of India? And the young man said, oh, does India have parts? So, we're identifying like that. What part of India am I from? Right? We have these identities. Just like I was born and raised in New York City, but I joined the movement in Chicago. And one time someone introduced me as being born in Chicago, and immediately I was offended. I was like, I'm not born in Chicago, I'm born in New York. So we have these identities. Our family, our place of birth, our place of residence. Then we have identities according to our work. I'm a software engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm a whatever. I'm a barber. And we have all these different identities. But is that who we really are? Are we really all of these things? The psychological research is that when we make decisions, we don't make decisions based on the pros or cons of the consequences of our decisions. We make decisions based on our sense of identity. We take a sense of identity and then we put the idealized form of that. And we say, well, what would a good person with this identity do? What would a good son do? What would a good brahmachari do? What would a good Indian do? What would a good engineer do? And that's how we make our decisions, based on that identity. We have an identity, an idealized identity, then we take actions. But any actions based on that identity, ahankara vimudhatma, kartaham iti manyate, any actions based on that identity entangle us in karma. Yes? And it leads to disappointment. It leads to anger and bitterness. Because it's not our real self. I can't really be a good anything in this world. I may try to be a good son or a good daughter, but are my parents always going to be happy with me? Are they? Are they? No. Or my siblings might think I'm not such a good son or good daughter. My brother, my sister may say, hey, how come you're not taking your turn taking care of our father? I'm doing more than you. And so other people are going to be disappointed. I was just hearing Prabhupada say that today, brings it up a lot. How Gandhi was thinking, I'm serving the country, but then one of his countrymen killed him. So people are going to say, hey, you're not a good this or good, or I'm going to say that about myself. I'm going to look at myself and say, well, maybe I'm not a really good wife. Maybe I'm not a really good father. And it's going to lead to all this bitterness and disappointment. But we're not any of those things. It's all false identities. It's like trying to be a good dolphin or something. It's just not who we are. So just like we want to see the world as the body of God, and we want to see that everywhere there's opportunity for service, we also want to always see that we are a servant. Jivara Swabhaya Krishnara Nichidasa. I am a servant of Krishna in all situations. And I like to call this the secret agent principle. You may have heard me talk about this before. So if someone is a spy, let's say you're a spy, I don't know, does Bahrain have any spy network? They do. Such a little country. And you can still be a Bahrainian spy. Amazing. This world is such an interesting place. So let's say you're a Bahrainian spy, and you're going to go spy in North Korea. So when you get to the immigration counter, oh, what are you going to do in our country? I'm going to spy for Bahrain. Not going to work. You have to have a cover story, right? Oh, I have an import-export business or something, right? All of our identities in this world are our cover story. Actually, we work for Krishna's company. We are his employees. And what is our product? What's our product? Yes, bhakti, service. Krishna Prema. That's our product. We're Krishna Prema salespersons for Krishna's company. And everyone we interact with, they're either a supervisor in the company or a colleague or a customer or a potential customer. Maybe now they're shopping in the Illusion Mall. And we have a cover story. Oh, I am your daughter. I am your father. I am your husband. I am a banker. That's our cover story. Because you can't just run up to people and say, would you like Krishna Prema? I mean, you can, but it won't be very effective. When I first moved in the temple, so first day Kishore were installed. Next day I was out on Harinam. Next day I was at the Chicago O'Hare Airport. And we didn't have real saris then. There were practically no Indians in America at that time. There were no sari shops. So we just went to a fabric store and bought these really heavy cloth, polycotton, very heavy polycotton cloth. And any of us who weren't married, we were all wearing saffron. So, I was wearing this heavy polycotton saffron. And if you couldn't keep it on your head, and if you clipped it on your head, it would have pulled out your hair. So we had to put a safety pin like this. You can see in some of the old photos. And during the day, it would move. So you would look like this, And then we had big nose rings, like a great big nose ring. And this polycotton cloth was very heavy, so it was dragging on the floor. And then we were told that the more pleats you had, the more chaste you were. So we had like 25 pleats. And I remember someone coming up to me at the airport and saying, you guys all look ridiculous. And I thought, what an operati, And then I looked at the devotees and I thought, actually, we all look ridiculous. But anyway, we had like Back to Godhead magazines, and we're just running up to people saying, here, sir, would you like to get this magazine about love of God? So we didn't sell very many. So you have to be a secret agent. You understand? Yes? Yes? So all of these other things, I'm a software engineer, I'm a pharmacist, I'm a mother. That's our cover story. And when we do these two problems, the world is a place of service, and I am a servant. If that's all you can remember from this presentation tonight. The world is a place of service, and I am a servant. The world is a place of service, and I am a servant. Then everything changes. Then there's no more dukalayam shasvatam. Prabhupada says, we see like that, there's no material world. Let's look at Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, one of my favorites for understanding how to have everything in our life enliven us spiritually. He says, O Lord, nothing further remains that may be called mine, declaring that my wealth, family members, home, and wife are truly yours. I continue as a mere servant to dutifully protect them. For the purpose of your service, I will earn money and bear the expense of maintaining your household. This is why we establish an altar in our home with the deity. Then it's not our house anymore. Or even a picture. Now it's Krishna's house. Krishna's bank account. Krishna's furniture. I'm the servant. Just like some of you, maybe now or in the past, you had a servant who lived in your house, and you had a servant's quarters, right? I grew up with servants like that. We had a servant's quarters. My dear friends, the master room of the house is your altar, and the rest of the house is the servant's quarters. We're living in the servant's quarters of Krishna's house. We have the story of Gopinath Pattanayaka. I don't have time to tell the whole story, but he got in a lot of trouble with the king, with Maharaj Prataparudra's son, actually. And after Mahaprabhu indirectly solved the whole problem, Gopinath Pattanayaka wanted to become a renunciate. And Mahaprabhu said, if you all adopt the renounced order and lose interest in dealing with pounds, shilling, and pence, I'm sure he didn't actually say pounds, shilling, and pence. That was how Prabhupada translated it, but there was no pound, shilling, and pence in Bengal at the time. Who will take care of maintaining your large family? Whether you involve in material activities or become completely renounced, you 5 brothers are my eternal servants, birth after birth. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati comments on this verse. He said, one should remember that one is eternally a servant of Krishna. Whether one is engaged in material activity involving money or in the renounced order, one should always think, I am a servant of Krishna. That is our real position. Both taking sannyas and dealing with money are external affairs, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati writes. In any condition, one should always consider how to please and satisfy Krishna. Thus, even if one is involved in great material affairs, he will not become attached, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta says. As soon as one forgets that he's an eternal servant of Krishna, then he becomes involved in material attachments. However, if one is always conscious that Krishna is the supreme master and he's an eternal servant of Krishna, he's a liberated person. You see how the guy's in a bubble? He's protected. He's always thinking, I'm a servant of Krishna. Now, one key of making sure that we're doing service to Krishna in the world is to work according to our own nature. So as was mentioned, I worked with a co-author, Dr. Ruchira Datta. We published this book, Career Dharma, about the Varna part of Varnashram, how to make sure we're working according to our nature. We are all considered, Prabhupada says, to be cells in the universal body of God. So just like the cells in my lungs, they're serving my whole body, but only if they're in the lungs. If some cell in my lungs travels to the heart, it cannot serve the body, correct? Right? If my liver cell migrates to my brain, it cannot serve the body. The cells of my body can only serve my body if they are in the right place. So Krishna says twice in the Bhagavad Gita, do your swadharma, don't do paradharma. Don't do someone else's dharma. He says this in 345, repeats it in 1847. To serve the Lord in the world. One reason that our activities don't enliven us is if we're doing someone else's work. He says, don't go on someone else's path. Even if you think you can do it expertly. Don't pretend to be someone that you are not. Krishna says you won't be able to do it anyway. He says, what does repression accomplish? Everyone is going to act according to their nature anyway. And Krishna says, if you try to do someone else's work, instead of service, it will become a bhayavaha. It will become a vehicle of fear. Like if you try to drive a bicycle in the water or a car in the sky, it will be a vehicle of fear for you and everyone else. When we do our own dharma, we are naturally enlivened. When I do someone else's dharma, I'm going to feel depleted. We were just talking about this yesterday. When we're doing our own dharma, it energizes us. We still have to sleep, we still have to take a break, we still have to eat, but we're energized. When we're doing someone else's dharma, we're depleted. When we're doing our own dharma, our mind is naturally our friend. It's very easy to make our mind our friend. When I'm doing someone else's dharma, I'm constantly battling with my mind. When I'm doing my dharma, I'm getting satisfaction from the work itself. And I can be offering that work to Krishna now and now and now and now and now. When I'm doing someone else's dharma, I'm not really getting satisfaction from the work. And then I get very attached to the results of the work. And it's very difficult to dedicate them to Krishna. So one real key into how I can be seeing the world as service and seeing myself as a servant is to do the work according to my psychophysical nature and not do someone else's work. Finally, I want to focus on one of my favorite statements from Srila Prabhupada. It's a letter to Jayapataka Maharaj on December 19th, 1972. And I really feel that this letter encapsulates how I can see everything as service and myself as a servant, thus finding everything in my life to be spiritually enlivening. I divided this into 4 parts. Prabhupada didn't do that. I did that. It could conceivably be divided into 5 parts. So the secret of surrendering to Krishna is that such surrendered devotee sees that, 1, again, Prabhupada didn't put the numbers, I did, that 1, everything is part of Krishna's plan. Whatever is meant to be, I am doing. 2, let me do it with my full attention to every detail. 3, let me become absorbed in such service, never mind what it is, let all other considerations be forgotten. That could be 2 things instead of 1. And number 4, only my desire to do the best for Krishna's alone pleasure is my motive. Let's look at these briefly, one at a time. Everything is part of Krishna's plan. Whatever is meant to be, I am doing. This is the essence of knowing that I have some service here, now, with these people, with these objects, in this moment. In this moment, at this place, with these people, and at every moment, in every place, whoever I'm with, there's some service for me to do. I'm never in a situation, never, ever, ever, am I in a situation that has no service value. There's always some service for me to do. There's always some way I can be Krishna's servant. Now, this statement does not mean that I'm going to sit here giving this class for the rest of my life because this is where Krishna wants me to be. That's not what that means. It doesn't mean I never change anything. And it doesn't mean that in this moment I never prepare for the future. Maybe in this moment I'm buying a ticket someplace for a trip in a month. But I'm still connecting with Krishna in this moment. I have some service in this moment. One of the main ways to forget Krishna and to be spiritually unenlivened is always be thinking I want to do something else. Or I need to finish what I'm doing to do something else. Let me finish this so I can do something else. Let me finish, even on a minor scale, let me finish cleaning the dishes so I can chant. Let me finish my work so I can retire and go to a holy place. My dear friends, next minute you may be dead. What about connecting with Krishna right now? You may never have time to retire in a holy place. You may never have time to get to the Bhagavad Gita. You may die doing the dishes. Why not connect with Krishna now? Why not say, what is my service for Krishna now, here? Again, sometimes your service for Krishna may be to change your situation. It doesn't mean that this does not mean that whatever situation you're in right now, you have to stay in for the rest of your life. But it means there's always some service to look. What can I do for Krishna here? Maybe it's something very simple. Like I tell this all the time, how when we met Prabhupada in 1974, and my father said, I'm coming to the temple to see my daughter and son-in-law, not to see Krishna. And Prabhupada said, right, he was sitting like this. Prabhupada was like this. He had his dhoti up on his right leg, and he said, yes. He said, they are loving Krishna, And I was sitting there thinking, I don't know if I love Krishna. Prabhupada said, they are loving Krishna and you are loving them. So two things equal to the same thing are equal to each other. So what's some service you can do anywhere? Love Krishna and act in a way that people will love you. That's pretty simple. Be lovable and love Krishna. Then when they love you, it will be the same as loving Krishna. Be a transparent via media. It's not just for Guru, everybody. Oh, Guru is transparent via media and I'm just dark. Nobody can see Krishna through me. Krishna says in the 12th chapter, one who is not envious but is a kind friend to all living entities is very dear to me. Be kind. Don't be kind out of your ego. I'm kind because I'm such a kind person. That's Maya. Rajagun Maya is if I'm kind to them, they'll be kind to me in the future. Or people will praise me that I am so kind. And Sattvagun Maya is, I am such a kind person. So don't be in Maya like that. But if you're thinking Krishna's here, he's watching, he's in every atom, he's in my heart, he's watching how I'm dealing with people. Let me be kind to please him. That can be our service. Let me be honest. But I'm just remembering one time our family was shopping and we had paid for all the items, and when we got out to our car, we noticed there was one item in the cart that we hadn't paid for. You know, now they usually put stickers, it'll set off an alarm, but it wasn't like that. And my husband said, we have to pay for this. Some minor item. I mean, it was probably worth $1 or something. It was very minor. So we go back in the store, and we were dressed in dhoti and sari with tilak. We went back in the store, and we said, oh, this item was in our cart. We didn't pay for it. And the cashier just looked at us like we were from Mars. And immediately said, what religion are you? Service to Krishna can be that simple. You understand? What service can I do here and now? Second thing, let me do it with my full attention to every detail. Give great attention, whatever it is. Not just to people, but to things. All these things are also part of Krishna's body. This table, this book stand, it's all part of Krishna. Let me really pay attention to the details of how I'm doing something. Not be sloppy, not be wasteful. And absorbed in such service, never mind what it is. Let all other considerations be forgotten. So sociologists call this going into a state of flow. You know, when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, they forgot about eating and sleeping. Eating and drinking and sleeping. They were just absorbed. So to be fully absorbed like that, whatever it is, whatever that service is, of course, it's important to work according to our nature, but whatever the specific service is. I'm washing the pots, or I'm chanting my japa. Prabhupada would say those who clean the marble of the temple are the same as those who are bathing the deity, because it's all part of Krishna. Whatever this service is, try to do it first class. Pay attention to the details. Become absorbed in it. I was recently in a place where devotees had been setting up for a festival, and they put some tape down on some mats on the floor. And when they took the tape up, it had damaged the floor. And they just thought, oh well, floor's damaged. Some of them I said, do you see you damaged the floor? Oh really? I didn't see. But to pay attention to the details of what you're doing. With full absorption. And we'll talk about this more. Can't remember which one. I think tomorrow we're going to talk about this more, about how to be absorbed in what we're doing at the moment. And this one, only my desire to do the best for Krishna's alone pleasure is my motive. So why am I doing what I'm doing? Just to make Krishna smile. Dear friends, this is difficult, okay? It's difficult to have this as our only motive. I'm always catching my mind dangling other motives in front of me. Oh, if you do this, people will be very impressed. Oh, if you do this, maybe they'll give you the Mahaprasadam. Something, It's amazing. But when our mind does these things, oh, you have this, you'll get this, you'll get this, you'll get this. Take it back and say, is Krishna smiling? Simple. How can I make Krishna smile? How can I make Krishna smile when I'm driving? How can I make Krishna smile when I'm brushing my teeth? How can I make Krishna smile when I'm working? How can I make Krishna smile when I'm cooking? How can I make Krishna smile? One class Prabhupada said, the residents of Vrindavan, all they want to do is make Krishna smile. Then we have freedom, even in this world. Prabhupada writes in the purport to Madhya 12, 192, for one who becomes Krishna conscious, the distinction between material and spiritual varieties does not exist. An advanced devotee sees everything as one, Krishna. An advanced devotee sees everything as one, Krishna. One who is in full Krishna consciousness does not distinguish between things material and spiritual. He takes everything to be related to Krishna and therefore spiritual. Again, there are sinful activities that prevent us from seeing that everything is Krishna. You follow? You're drinking alcohol, you'll become in tamagun, you won't see that everything is Krishna. There's nothing wrong with alcohol. You can use it to disinfect wounds. It's not that anything is inherently bad, you understand? But if you take it, you'll be in tamagun. So when we say nothing is material, that doesn't mean there's not things that will make us see things as material. Prabhupada writes in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 5:29, right, that this is how we actually get in a position of peace, right? What does Krishna say? Yatva mam shanti richati. If you see that I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, I'm the friend, then you're going to have peace. You will not experience the miseries of material life. And one of my favorite quotes from Krishna book, chapter 20, for the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who's in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated. Now, sometimes when I say that quote, people say, Urmila, aren't you quoting it wrong? Don't the materialists think that they're happy in the world and the devotees see it as aggressive? And I said, well, then why would you want to be a devotee? A materialistic person thinks this world is aggressive, this world is difficult, I have to control it. And the devotee, if they see everywhere, in everything, at every place, with everyone, with everything, there is some service for me to do for Krishna. And everywhere I am a servant. My other identities are cover stories. Everywhere there is service, and everywhere I'm a servant. And then everything is spiritually enlivening. There's no material world. There's no material activities. There's no material consciousness. We don't have to wait till we die and go to some other realm. But even here, we won't feel that we're in the material world. Everywhere there's service, everywhere I can be a servant. Every place, every situation, with every person, with everything, I have some service. And I am always a servant. So it's already 9 o'clock, which is very bad. I'm usually much better with time, but I was irresponsible today. So should we not have questions, since it's already 9 on a working day? What do you want to do with this? 2 questions, okay. They have to be. It's funny when people say I have a short question. I never know what that means, a short question. Does that mean it's a question with a yes or no answer, or a not too complicated question, since it's already, oh, you've got a mic for each of your heads, like Lord Brahma, you have to have all different mics. Yes, Prabhu. Well, if somebody loves Ganesha, as Yat Padapalava Yugam Vinidhaya Kumbha Dvandve Pranama Samaye Saganadi Raja Vignan Vahantumalamasya Jagatrayasya Govindamadi Purusham Tam Maham Vajami. If one loves Ganesha in that way, no problem. Okay, if they don't know. So if they don't know that Ganesh is a servant of Krishna, there's still some benefit. You know, there's still some benefit. It's just like if you're following the Vedas for karmic purposes, at least you're following the Vedas. Then someday you may read the other portions as well. So someday you might say, oh, why does Ganesh have so much power? That question may arise. So better that than just to be a gross materialist and think that life just comes from matter and there's no cause and there's no anything. But that's a very intelligent question. You know, when Lord Nrsingadev says to Prahlad, so many generations of your family will be purified, Prabhupada writes in the purport that this implies several lifetimes. He said, because the only people who are liberated are those who have attachment to the devotee. And he said, you know, utmost we know like our great-grandparent or great-grandchild. Usually great-great you don't know. So therefore you can't liberate all these generations in one lifetime because you've only got like 6 per lifetime that you could liberate. So there has to be some attachment. And do they have to know that we're a devotee? That's an interesting question. I don't think absolutely that they do. There's still some benefit like that. Of course, there's also a difference. You could also argue, do they love Ganesh? That could also be a very interesting question. Or do they have a merchant relationship with Ganesh? That's another very interesting question. So generally the worshippers of the demigods don't actually love the demigods. Prabhupada talks about how they're just trying to bribe them. Forget which verse it is. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada says it's a type of lust, where you're lusting after something that's not due to you. You know, you didn't study for your exam and you got a bad grade, so you bribed the professor to adjust your grade. You know, so by my karma, by my own actions, I don't have as much money or beauty or health or power or whatever that I would like. And so I'm going to go to the officers in the universe and, hey, move my karma around a little bit. And they can do that, actually. They have that power to do that. They can't liberate you, but they can shift your karma around. They can give you the benediction. So I don't think that's loving Ganesh. So that would be another answer. So levels of answers. But we encourage people, you can see the demigods as Krishna's servant. We don't have any problem with that at all. Yes? Hare Krishna. Oh, our will. What is the place of our will? I can cooperate with that plan and exult in that plan and relish that plan and be enthusiastic with that plan or not. There's one place where Prabhupada says we are all part of Krishna. That means we're all a partner. And that everything is part of Krishna's plan, whatever is meant to be I'm doing. Doesn't mean that Krishna has planned out every single little detail of everything we're supposed to do and we're a robot. That's not what that means. Yeah, this is a very good question. Two excellent questions there. And okay, let's just say that I make a plan with you that we're going to go see the ocean. And let's say I say, hey, let's go see the ocean. But that doesn't mean that you have no will. First of all, you can decide whether or not you want to go. And that even when you're going, you're still in charge of your interactions. We say that Krishna doesn't enjoy matter. He only enjoys spirit. And I've put a lot of thought and care and prayer to what does that mean? See, matter cannot say no. If I say, I'm going to put you cartels over here, they can't object. They have to do what I tell them. If they don't, there's something radically wrong with them, like if I can't move them. But a living being can say no. And a living being is somewhat unpredictable. Right? Yeah. I mean, part of love is the fact that your lovable object has some unpredictability about it. There's some fascination about it. I mean, we can be fascinated by insects even, because we're not quite sure what they're going to do. So Krishna is also fascinated by us, and he loves us. And he wants to have a relationship with us as one living being to another. He's the supreme living being, we're the tiny living being, but our relationship is as one living being to another. And just because we have some service for Krishna to do in every situation doesn't mean we only have one option of how to do service. That may be true in some circumstances. So there may be some circumstances where, okay, Krishna says, I put you in this situation, there's only one thing I want you to do, just this one thing. But in many cases, from Krishna's point of view, we may have 200 different ways we can be of service in that situation, and Krishna would be pleased with all of them. And in fact, Krishna likes us to look around and say, how can I serve you? Think of if you're running a company, okay? And if you're a good boss, you're a good boss. You're not a bad boss. You're a good boss. And you have one employee that just does what he's told. Very good, just does what he's told. Not told to do something, doesn't do anything. Told to do something, does it well. Then you have another employee who does what he's told, but also takes initiative and goes to you and say, hey, I've been looking at this thing, and I think we can make more of a profit over here. And there's this market we haven't really explored. And there's this other thing. And my dear boss, what do you think about that? And if you're a good boss, you're going to appreciate that kind of employee more. Am I correct? If you're a bad boss, you won't. But if you're a good boss, you're going to be happy if your employees take initiative to further the mission of the company. Srila Prabhupada talks about how his own Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, sent disciples to London. So from that, Srila Prabhupada could understand that his Guru Maharaj wanted to take the movement out of India. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also sent a book to McGill University in Canada. So Prabhupada can understand my Guru Maharaj, my Parama Guru Maharaj, they wanted to take this out of India. Nobody told Srila Prabhupada to go to America. Prabhupada did not get any order to go to America. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati said, preach in English to English-speaking people. Well, there were English-speaking people in India Prabhupada was preaching to. And Prabhupada talks about this. How did Srila Prabhupada decide to go to native English speakers? And why America? He said, I was considering that people are not so much following the British anymore. Now they're following the Americans. That's still true in the world. How much longer that will be true is another question. But that's still to a large extent true, that the British have stopped being the leaders of culture in the world. It's switched to the Americans. Again, that may not be true in 5 years. So Prabhupada thought, oh, if I go to America and I can make Americans Krishna conscious, they'll convince everybody else. And here I am doing that exact thing. I'm even talking to Indians, which I find bizarre. Here I am, an American, convincing Indians to surrender to Krishna. I mean, how bizarro is that? But that was Prabhupada's idea, and that's what worked. He brought us dancing white elephants back to India and convinced the Indians to take up Krishna consciousness. My point is, Prabhupada was taking initiative. He was using his intelligence. He was taking initiative. He was saying, this is how he was filling in the details. How am I going to do that? So in this moment, I have some service. And in this moment, I am a servant. Let me also use, well, Krishna's giving me intelligence. Krishna's giving me abilities. Let me reciprocate that by trying to use that according to my will in his service, so that he'll smile on me and say, I'm so pleased with how you're using your free will. I'm so pleased with how you're using the intelligence I gave you. I'm so pleased with how you're using the abilities I gave you. Well done, my good and faithful servant. That's how it should work. Ultimate reality is a dance. And in a dance, you're not a stick of wood. Pretty hard to have a nice dance partner who's just a stick of wood.
So, who is the observer?
Who is the observer and who is observed? Oh, we're going into very deep philosophy here.
You said like observe. Who is the observer? Is it me watching me and understanding me?
Or
I'm thinking like I'm the observer and observe like whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm watching out after the action, and that thing is done by me.
Kshetra Jam Chapi Mam Vidhi Sarva Kshetra Shubharata Kshetra Kshetra Jayorganam Yataj Jnanam Atamnama. There's two. You and
Observer and observe.
both you and Krishna are the observers.
I was like, that's what I'm saying.
It's an and.
We are together one, right?
And both. Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. Now you're getting into a whole other realm, Prabhu, and it's 9:13. If you want to go to Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, then we have another hour class here on that. But yeah, you're looking at Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. You're looking at something inconceivable, describable but not conceivable. So both you and Krishna are the observers. You are one and you are separate. And you are one and you are separate simultaneously, absolutely, and inconceivably. And if that makes your head spin, it should, because it's a achintya. But it's really sweet. It's actually a really sweet thing that we're totally one with Krishna and we're totally different from Krishna at the same time. And one can experience the sweetness of both positions simultaneously and separately. Is that enough for right now? And you can go more deeply into this another time. And that was actually a third question, so that was kind of cheating because he said two questions. And so he asked one question and you asked one question, and then because you were already talking with the mic, you threw in a third one. But it was all very good questions. So thank you very much. Anything good in this presentation is from Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas in the Shastra. Anything bad in this presentation is from me. So please either correct my mistakes or disregard them, and please just take the good. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
The grace